So this video shows how to serve static files from our web application using a rack middleware called rack static. If you remember the last video, we started with creating a simple rack-based web application. So when we start our Puma web server, it uses the config.ru file, which starts our application. So our application is a rack-based application. So it has the call method, which takes a env hash. This env hash represents the HTTP request environment, and in the response we send the HTTP status 200 for success, headers, and a response. Our response for right now is just a static HTML string, and we are also using only two gems, Puma for our application server and rack for using the rack reloader middleware, so we don't have to restart the server and every time we make a change in the source code. So in this video, what we are going to do is two things. First, we will separate the views like from the main application logic. So right now you can see we are embedding a static hard-coded string in our response, which is pretty typically a bad idea. So we want some separation of concerns. So we will move this view from outside of our application to a separate views directory to serve the views. And then we'll use the rack static middleware to serve static files such as CSS files. Okay, so let's get started. I'll start by creating a views directory, and in there I will add an index.html file, and for now I'll just copy this string. Then we want to render this HTML in our response, right? So let's do this. I'll create a variable and I'll use the file.read method to read the contents of the index HTML. And we'll just return that in our response. Actually, I don't need this intermediate variable. All right. So let's reload the page. Actually, I haven't started the server, so let's run that and reload the page, and you can see it renders hello world. And let's make a change. And you can see it picks up our changes too. So the reloader gem is working, middleware is working as expected. Okay, so now we have moved the views, the HTML view string from outside the main logic to a separate views directory. And now we will add, we'll use a style sheet in our application. So if you see, our application is looking pretty basic right now. So let's add some style sheet. And before that, I'll just make this is standardized HTML. So I have a template here. I'll just copy paste it. So there's nothing much to it. It's just a standard HTML. So I have an HTML tag, and in there I have head and body. Body contains the greetings from rack, just like we had before. And we added a link tag that refers to a style.css file in the public directory, which doesn't exist right now. So let's create that. And in here, I'll just add some basic style. So let's add the width of 600 pixels. Want to center it horizontally, so 1M auto. And we'll use the font family to be sans serif. Oops. Okay. So let's reload the page, and nothing changed here. So let's inspect the DevTools and see what's going on. So if I reload the page, you can see it made the request for style.css, but if we inspect the response, it's the same response we get for the main HTML request for our main document, right? Greetings from rack, and it's sending the same response for the style.css request. Now, why is that happening? And the answer is we are not differentiating between those two requests. Okay, so this is our application that's handling all the requests, right? So when the request for a main page comes, it goes through this code and returns the response HTML. When the request for favicon.ico comes, it comes here, and we are checking if it is a request for favicon, then we return favicon like this. And when the request for style.css comes, we're not checking anything here, so it just comes down here and we send the same response from the index.html file. Okay, so that's why it's sending the same response. And now we could do the same thing we did for the index.html. So we could just read the style.css and return that if it's a request for style. But there's a better way to do this using the rack static middleware. So you can find the middleware in the rack repository here. And as you can see, it intercepts requests for static files such as style sheets, and it returns them, serves them using the rack files object. Okay, so we are going to use this middleware in our application. So let's go to config.ru and I'll use the rack static middleware. And it also takes a second parameter called for URLs, and uh, it represents the location of the static files that we want to serve. So I'll use that. It's an array, and I'm going to serve my CSS from the public directory. Okay, so that's all we need. So anytime a request for public style.css comes, the rack static middleware will check the public directory and it will serve this file directly. So if I reload the page and nothing changed, you know what, I have to restart Puma. So anytime I make a change in the config.ru file, I will have to restart server. Okay, so let's do that. And if I reload now, and my favicon broke for some reason. So let's see what went wrong. If I go to config.ru, right, it needs to be a URLs, not URL. So let's do that. Let's stop the restart the server and reload the page, and there we go. So now our style.css is loading the correct CSS, and our main application returns the correct HTML. All right, so if I clean everything and reload the page, awesome. So we have our style working now. So there we go. We learned how to use the rack static middleware to serve static files such as style sheets, and you can even serve JavaScript files in the same way. All right, so I hope that helped and you learned something new. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. See you in the next video. Bye now.